I was born in Sweetwater, Texas, and I lived out there for the first few years of my life. And then I went to move with my grandparents for a little bit. And we had some family challenges to overcome, but luckily, since it takes a village to raise a child, I definitely had my village. And a lot of my family and stepfamily had a part in that. So I ended up graduating from Princeton, Texas, which is in North Texas. I really just kind of found myself at the end of high school with wondering, what am I going to do? And I knew I wanted to go to school, but the aforementioned family problems kind of prevented them paying for it or me having the resources to be able to go on my own. And one of my good friends in high school said, I'm going to join the Marines. Why don't you check it out? So I went and talked to the recruiter and they sold me on it. And then I just decided to join. I was 18 years old. I chose communications. So I had the idea that I was going to be working with computers, but I ended up working with telephones instead. It was definitely a trade that I never would have gotten into in the beginning, like not on my own choice, but it worked out really well for me. I went to 9th Communications Battalion in Camp Pendleton, California. I graduated from my MOS school in December of 2005, and I was on the ground in Iraq in February 2006. So it was quite an adjustment for me, and it was the first time I'd ever been away from home. And so it was a difficult transition just getting there, but luckily they kept us very busy. There was a lot of work to be done, and our mission that year was to commercialize the base. So instead of having all of this 1970s just telephone wire laying around, we actually made it something similar to what you'd see here in the States. So when we got in country, it was still very cold, which I was not expecting. They told me that, but I expected we were going to the desert, so it was going to be hot. So it was just a lot of cold, dry wind, and then it rained a lot in February and March, and then it got really hot. And the best way that I can explain Iraq summer is just the way you feel when you have a hot blow dryer on you or the way it feels when you open your oven door. And that's what it felt like every single time we walked outside. It wasn't very difficult my first deployment, and I was lucky in the fact that although I was there for over a year, I did not have to see any kind of trauma. Of course, we were under stress a lot, but coming back, it was just, I had the same unit, and so was very supported by my friends and family. But the most difficult part of coming home was when I came home from leave, because my family was still expecting me to be the same 18-year-old kid that I was when I left. And obviously, there had been some things that changed during that time. I would say they were good changes, because when I joined the Marines, I wasn't very mature. And so going overseas and working the hardest I've ever worked in my life and being responsible for other people's lives really made a difference in mine. So when I was in the field one day with one of my companies getting ready to deploy for our second deployment, my first sergeant asked me, "Are you in school?" And I said, "No." And she asked why. And I told her because I didn't have time. And so she was like, "Well, what are you doing right now?" And she was like, "You could be working on your schoolwork right now." So she really encouraged me to get into school. And I got started with my bachelor's degree online, and I stuck with that. And after I got hurt and ended up going to a non-deployable unit, it gave me the opportunity to finish my degree. And when I finished my degree, I was at graduation in Washington, D.C., and the first sergeant that had encouraged me to go to school was graduating with her master's that same day. So that was a very exciting opportunity. So I went back to Fallujah on my second deployment, and it was very similar to my first deployment. We stayed in the same camp. We worked in the same place. There was a difference in the fact that most of the hard work had already been done, so we had a little more free time on our hands. I actually re-enlisted while I was in Iraq. I was one of those people who thought I was going to spend forever in the Marine Corps until they made me leave. And right after we got back from deployment, I hurt my ankle while I was running, and I subsequently had to have 5 surgeries while I was in the military. So they sent me to a non-deployable unit where I was able to teach Marines how to do their jobs. So I taught new Marines how to be switchboard operators and work the telecommunications systems. So during that time, I had a really difficult time, because once you get hurt, people lose stock in you when you're in the Marines. And so out of all of the challenges that I faced in my time in the Marines, it was navigating my peers and assuring them that I was still a good Marine even though I couldn't run. And that was a huge hurdle and challenge to overcome. And that's something that I still struggle with, because being hurt and not being able to fulfill my mission makes me feel like less of a person sometimes. But I also have realized like that injury gave me something to overcome, and the way that I was able to deal with my fellow Marines and to build resiliency has made a huge impact in my life. Teaching new Marines their jobs was a great experience for me. And one of the most interesting things is that I didn't realize how much it was going to be like teaching a person how to be a grown-up. When you think about it, these were 18-year-old kids that had lived with their parents most of their lives. So I found myself being not only a teacher in the MOS sense, but also a teacher on, how to do laundry and how to take care of finances and just how to navigate life. And that sense of purpose helped me a lot during the time that I was struggling with my injury. When I was working at MCSS, which is the School for Communications in the Marines, I was dealing with some Marines that were getting separated for personality disorders or mental health issues or even physical issues, and just seeing the difficulty that they had dealing with not only what they were facing personally, but the transition out of the military really inspired me to work with them. So I was actually medically separated. And so when I realized that my ankle wasn't going to get better, I really buckled down and worked hard to finish my school. So I was one of the few people who had the opportunity to complete my bachelor's degree before I got out of active duty. And that was quite an accomplishment for me, but it was fueled by knowing that I had to do something when I got out. I couldn't just stagnate. That's not me. I had an interesting experience with TAPS class and the different things they tell you before you get out. And so they were telling us how valuable we are, and we're military and we're going to have no trouble getting a job and it's going to be so easy for us. And I really bought into that, and I just never thought that failure was an option. And so when I got out and I started applying to jobs and doing different things, I quickly realized that it was not as they had told me, and it wasn't going to be as easy as they had made it seem. My biggest challenge was when I started applying to schools and jobs and I wasn't getting in and I wasn't getting the job. And instead of thinking that maybe I had been set up for failure or maybe I didn't have the right picture when I got out, I really took it hard as a reflection of something I was doing wrong. And so that really hurt my self-esteem and my self-worth. And I met a mentor who I work for as an adjunct faculty at Houston Community College, and he really helped me believe in myself and encourage me that you're better than this. You don't have to take a job. You need to find a career that you really love. And through talking to him and having his mentorship, it helped me decide to go to social work school and to pursue things that I didn't think were possible for me. I didn't know that I was lost when I found the Lone Star Veterans Association. And I had this feeling of just being off, or that something was wrong with me, or that I was just angry all the time. And when I found people that were like me, that had some of the same things going on, it helped me to understand a little better. And once I could do that, and I understood what was going on with me, then I know that other veterans that are going through similar situations need the same kind of help. And I know how to help them because I was able to help myself. For my future, I would like to get my PhD, and I hope to do that by going to the Graduate College of Social Work at the University of Houston. I had such a great experience there for my master's program. It taught me so much about the world and so much about myself. And I think that by becoming a doctor of social work, I can really help some of my fellow veterans with the issues that ail them.